months have passed since Iran and Western powers signed an agreement in Geneva which would put an end to Iran's decade-long nuclear crisis. Less than a day after that, Iran and the US started squabbling over the terms of the agreement, not knowing who is committed to what. I'm joined here by Dr. Mohammad Jvad Zarif, Iran's foreign minister. Sir, what's wrong with the agreement? Why are you squabbling over it with the US?
Well, we're not. We're actually sticking to the letter of the agreement. That is why we didn't produce any fact sheets. We believe it's important for us to use this opportunity to build confidence.
Hardly a week passes in which you wouldn't say that, no, we continue with our nuclear program, and America would say, no, they're not allowed to do this, they're not allowed to do that. So immediately after the press conference at the end of the Geneva negotiations, I was there, you said that we're going to continue with our nuclear program. Then Mr. Kerry came and said they're not allowed to continue with their program. Now, the public have the right to know.
The agreement is very clear. There are certain parts of the Iranian nuclear program that will continue. There are certain parts that, the enrichment over 5%, that we have agreed not to continue.
So the hoo-ha is for internal consumption?
I have tried to remain very true to what we agreed and not to try to spin it for domestic consumption, and that is why I didn't produce any fact sheet. It wasn't an attempt by Iran to win at the expense of the other side, because we believe that is not sustainable. And now we have agreed that on the 18th of February we will meet in Vienna to start working on the difficult part, and that is the comprehensive deal.
Right. In return of a partial cut to your program, your nuclear program, you're now receiving the $7 billion Iranian assets frozen in America in tranches. Is that right?
There are sanction relief. Of course, we didn't believe from the beginning that these sanctions were legal, because this is our money, and there are no international legal instruments that would prevent us from having access to our money. There are some cash that will become available. There are other areas where, for instance, the revenues from petrochemical sales by Iran. So that amounts to some amount of money. But I'm not going to quarrel about the exact dollar figure, because it's just the beginning, and we will start knowing how much it will come to when it comes to the end of the 6 months.
So in short, you are receiving tranches of your own money, but not in cash often. What's dictated to Iran is, we release this amount of money in return of sending you our goods at the price that we decide.
No, it's not. Actually, we can take some of this money in cash, and the rest in open letters of credit with whoever we want to purchase it. It's not. I don't like to be dictated, and I will never accept anything that is dictated to.
But they put a cap on the oil export?
They had put a cap on the oil export previously. They agreed not to increase the cap. As I said, these sanctions were illegal to begin with. But we are dealing in a world that is not run by legality. It's a world, unfortunately, that the American political muscle and economic muscle usually is able to persuade countries and private sectors.
Do you see yourself as a victim?
I see the international community as a victim, because we have allowed might to be able to overcome rights. But that's the fact, and I'm not going to quarrel about that. It's a situation where we want to move ahead and establish a different type of relations with the international community. As you know, we came into office only 6 months ago, and we inherited a situation which was not the best circumstances. The United States was enabled, basically, because of certain mistakes that were made, to impose its views on the rest of the international community. It's not a healthy exercise, but it's an exercise that is ongoing nevertheless.
You have invited oil companies and cartels, international cartels, to come to Iran and sign agreements for Iranian oils. What are the terms on which you have agreed with them? And if you have already signed any contracts...
No, it's just the beginning, and we haven't signed
any. Are you
any.
going to release the copies of those contracts for the public to see?
Usually oil contracts are not public documents. I mean, in no other country there are confidentiality clauses in every oil deal that is available, but we have constitutional limitations. We are trying to make our oil sector more open to international investment, and our Ministry of Petroleum is in the process of developing new types of agreements. I'm sure the model agreement will be out in the open. We'll make it public once it's ready, so that every oil company can benefit from the new openings in the Iranian market, which is very much appreciated by international oil companies. But the details of every deal that we make with every corporation will be governed by the confidentiality clauses within that agreement.
The public Iranians are concerned that you being in this situation, and you've already succumbed to pressure by the international community, they're afraid that these contracts are signed to the benefit of the oil cartels, and we go back to the Qatar period.
That will certainly not happen. The Iranian public has a way of expressing its views, and that is through the ballot box. They've done it in the past. If they consider our behavior to be outside the limits of national interest, they'll do it again.
Very well, let's move to your area, that is foreign policy. Recently you said that all foreign forces in Syria had to leave and vacate the country and leave it to the people to decide. In that case, why is it that the Quds Corps is still there and has a very strong presence in Syria?
What I said, and what I continue to believe, is that the future of Syria is for the Syrian people to determine, and the Syrian people should do it without interference from the outside. Now, Iran is pledging its support for a political outcome because we believe there is no military.
But then you have a military presence.
We don't have a military presence. The Syrian government is a government recognized by the United Nations, has a seat in the United Nations, and Iran has long-standing relations with that government. I believe those who are supporting terrorist groups that are on the UN list of terrorist organizations, those should be accountable for the support that they're providing, the money, the arms they're providing to those terrorist organizations. I don't see any law against having relations with Syria, but Iran does not have armed forces in Syria.
Very well, one last question. Ever since Mr. Rouhani came to power, the number of executions have dramatically increased. What do you have to say about that?
Our judiciary is independent. And the presidential elections has had very little effect on the judiciary. Of course, we do not get ourselves involved or intervene in the affairs of the judiciary. We'd like to see certainly lower executions in all countries. We like to see greater respect for human rights in all countries, and certainly our human rights record can be improved, but it takes time for this government to have an impact on all aspects of the Iranian life.
Dr. Zarif, thank you.
It was good to be with you.